Sometimes my jokes can be considered offensive or a little too edgy for some people, and I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea of who I am up here. It's me, Latino comedian and registered sex offender Martin Urbano.
Hey Martin, we're glad you're single now. Come and me. Hey, me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CGP the podcast where we talk about the people who are going to be hosting the Chris Gethard Show. We're not the Chris Gethard Show podcast, though. Oh my God, you're right.
Not the Chris Gethard Show. This ain't the Chris Gethard Show.
It's the Martin Urbano Show for the second time.
Isn't. CGP will be this week.
Yes, it is. And we're talking about Martin Urbano, this show. We're not the podcast that has Martin Urbano on it and Chris Gethard. They're the actual CGP podcast, still on the Earwolf Presents
I'm
feed.
wondering if it's ever going to make it over or if it's just going to control the Earwolf Presents feed for the most part forever.
Are they trying to catch us? Is Earwolf trying to catch the people who are definitely going to be listening to that and therefore are open to new comedy?
I actually would not be surprised if that was the case.
Right? Clever.
Who are you, by the way?
I'm Emily Pineapple.
And I'm Forrest, the keeper of the canon.
And we're here to talk about episode 206, Martin Urbano's his Comedy Amateur Class Volume 2, airing on October 9th, 2019. Are you excited to learn more about being an amateur comedian, Forrest?
I'm really excited. And I mean, given that he took us to being comedy ones last time.
Oh my God.
I can't wait to see what numbers we get to be now.
Probably 2.
I don't know. Maybe like 1.1.
1.1?
Yeah.
I'd be okay with 1.1.
You learn a lot when you first start a craft, and then you sort of learn less but more detail. And so I think it's that. I don't think we can keep our, rocket-like trajectory going forever.
Well, we'll see with a teacher like Martin. Who knows? Here's the bio of Martin Urbano. It's the same one.
And it's from his website.
It's the same one we said in the first episode we had about him. But this time we're going to be talking about his tweets. And we're also going to give all of you a comedy amateur class from us, amateur comedy theorists.
Rank amateur comedy theorists.
What do they call like an art critic? Are we comedy critics? We don't really critique. We don't say when we don't like things.
I mean, praise is also critics say they like things.
Well, we're positive critics.
Yeah, we're what are we?
We're comedy critics. I want us to be like the foremost experts. I want like talk shows to call us in so that we can tell them why they think things are funny.
I was wondering why my blazer got these fashionable elbow patches.
They happen. Yeah. They just happen over time. It's like evolution.
As you read theory, they just spontaneously appear.
Oh my God. Well, speaking of Martin Urbano.
Yes.
Martin Urbano is a New York City-based comedian / satirist who has appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, The CW on Howie Mandel's Comedy Gala, and Comedy Central. He's currently writing on an upcoming Viceland show. Oh, do we know what that is?
I don't know what that is, no.
He's writing for a pilot for TBS. Has pilot season come and gone?
I don't know.
In the past 10 weeks?
I'm sure it's very funny, though, if it's on TBS.
He's performed at Just for Laughs, Bonnaroo, the New York Comedy Festival, Boston Calling, and has opened for Chris Kattan.
Yes.
Martin will also be a part of the staff for the reboot of the National Lampoon Radio Hour with Cole Escola, Joe Firestone, Rachel Pegram, Brett Davis, Maeve Higgins, Alex English, Lorelai Ramirez,
yeah,
Megan Stalter, and Aaron Jackson.
I love Aaron Jackson, who we talked to quite a bit about on our Josh Sharp episode.
Oh, we know him?
Yeah, he was in a lot of the sketch. He was on The Opposition.
Oh.
Along with Josh Sharp.
Aaron Jackson. I'm sorry, I didn't say it with the appropriate recognition and joy.
Aaron and Josh Sharp
Oh, they're the two
performed
guys.
together a lot. They were the two guys. Yeah.
I love him. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah. That's why I was like, no, this is keep it going, keep it building.
Oh man, he's amazing. Okay.
And we're highlighting Martin's tweets on this mini-sode, but Martin also highlighted some of his own tweets and the tweets of comedian Julia Claire on volume 1 of his amateur class. So we're in great company.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're basically taking his form and we are doing what all theorists do. We stand next to it and say what they're doing with
Yes.
fancier words
Yes.
than the ones that you know. And so you think that we are smart.
And we're out here in the Learning Annex, here to teach you all about this.
At the Learning Annex. At the San Francisco Learning
Just
Annex of
go
Comedy.
down the stairs below the comedy club. Keep on going. Keep going. Look for the poorly lit room with fluorescent lights, and that's us.
But not poorly lit the way like a comedy club would be where there's
No.
poorly lit like
Not atmospherically poorly lit. Just bad.
just
lighting.
fluorescent lights.
Green fluorescent lighting. I went to community college for a little bit, so I have fond memories of this kind of atmosphere.
So his frequent collaborators are, of course, Kelsey Kane, his partner in comedy and romance. And together they host the Little Miss Comedy Pageant in New York City. And in January of 2019, they held a taping at Littlefield.
Yes.
They also do a bi-weekly show called Latino and the Trap at the Ferns.
Tramp.
And the Trip?
Tramp. There's a typo. It's Latino and the Tramp, like Lady and the Tramp.
I was like, what is she trapping him into?
No.
Well, that's pretty good. Still a pretty good title.
And then she was also on the CGP episode, with that first CGP episode
She was.
with Chris Gethard.
Yeah, talking about comedy that goes too far and that crosses lines.
Yeah.
So speaking of, we're going to talk about 15 social media posts that we like, and then we're going to do a fun exercise about comedy.
Yes.
So let's get started. Number 1, on Twitter, he does a lot of his tweets responding to articles.
Yeah, that's like one of the most common forms his tweets take.
And headlines, which is
Yes.
fun.
So, yeah.
So the New York Post had an article. Dalai Lama still thinks a female successor must be, quote, attractive, unquote. Do you want to be Martin?
Yeah, then Martin says, I disagree. I think the world is finally ready for a Dalai Lama we don't want to fuck.
Because it implies that he wants to fuck the Dalai
This
Lama.
one's the hot one, and that the next one should just be not hot, finally to give us all a break.
Yep. A good comment was from Mr. or person Jay Weber. There is a huge is in all caps, which is why I did that's the verbal equivalent of caps. There is a huge difference between finding the Dalai Lama attractive and wanting to fuck the Dalai Lama. There is. Good job, Jay.
Yeah,
Thank
I liked
you.
that. I liked that was there.
Yeah.
The second one is Martin saying, this is also a tweet, and it was posted on June 18th, 2019, where Martin said, successful entertainers are allowed to get away with sick, perverse, and generally horrible behavior without any repercussions. I mean, why do you think I'm trying to become a successful entertainer?
Oh, yeah.
And I love this because it's a great example of his tendency in his comedy to like guide you down what is the fairly obvious, straightforward path for the joke to go, and then just doing a dark swerve.
Forrest, I think you might be spoiling the second half of the episode.
Am I?
We're going to see if your amateur
Oh.
observations of the comedy
Okay,
that's
well, then
happening
I'll-
here, is it a professional observation or not? We'll see.
Then I guess I'll keep it
How
zipped
much
for a
of
little
a
bit.
natural are you? No, it's a really, it's a good one, but we'll talk about it.
Okay. And then number 3 is Martin saying that he was upset because someone called his comedy a bunch of dad jokes, but then he found out that person was Dylan Farrow, which is funny because Woody Allen is Dylan Farrow's dad, so it ties into his whole like
Famous pedophile, Woody Allen.
Right, so it ties into his whole like sex offender thing.
I think this is my favorite one.
It's a good one.
It's so dark. It's so dark.
And he even, I mean, it's similar to the joke that Martin made on his CGP episode where he listed Woody Allen and Bill Cosby as his comedic influences.
Yeah, no, he's not letting these people just fucking sit down. And I think that's really cool of him. Number 4, Martin, I wish I loved anything as much as dogs love their own genitals. The closest thing for me is probably dog genitals.
And then Caleb said, I'm a little scared to like this post. And that was posted on June 16th, 2019. And then number 4 was Martin saying, nope, that was not it. Number 5 is what I'm on. I can count, which is them. So do you have like a catchphrase in your stand-up? Me, I'm a registered sex offender. Them, that's your catchphrase? Me, my catch what?
Very cute. I like it a lot.
I just love how often how I love that he doubles down on that element of his stand-up persona through these tweets, because it adds a lot to it. Doing it on Twitter is this whole other context. So it's fun seeing that part of his persona manifested in that sphere.
He is Kaufman-esque.
Yeah, and seeing who gets it and who doesn't, and how he like responds to the people who don't get it, as we'll see later on.
Number 6 on Twitter, Martin responding to commenters who didn't like his Comedy Central set. Martin says, like my mom always says, fuck 'em with kindness. And an image showing the following comments.
WTF happened, Comedy Central?
Martin, I know, right? They've gotten pretty great.
He might be good guy, but he's not that funny.
Martin, thanks. There's more to life than being funny.
And this is the video we talked about last time where he has the hat on saying,
I'm a good guy.
I'm a good guy, and then tells dark jokes while wearing that hat.
So that people don't get the wrong idea.
Right, and so it worked.
Yep.
That one guy knew he's a good guy.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah.
Number 7 is, this might be my favorite, which is Martin saying, when God closes a door, he opens a window, and gentleman takes out blueprint. That's how we're getting into heaven. And I just love this idea of like a celestial Ocean's 11 franchise.
There is a podcast right now called The Writer's Room and these Hollywood writers are writing a movie like scene by scene or whatever over time, and it's a celestial heist. It's a celestial heist movie.
That's right.
It's a really fun podcast.
I heard that ad. I totally didn't put 2 and 2 together.
It's a celestial
heist. That's awesome.
Yep. Number 8, Martin responds to a controversy around the chilling adventures of Sabrina. The New York Post says, critics have slammed Chilling Adventures of Sabrina underage orgy scene.
Martin said, see, this is why I don't listen to critics.
And you really shouldn't, Martin.
Number 9, me. I'm leaving my girlfriend. It turns out she's a pedophile.
Friend, how do you know?
She said she wants kids.
Friend, I don't think that...
I'm leaving her. And this one's funny because it's flipping it on its head.
Lol.
I just like the little scenes he does.
Yeah, it is pretty cute.
I like that he's using Twitter tweets for that. Number 10 is CBS News says Dr. Burnout behind many medical errors study finds.
Martin, well then fire Dr. Burnout.
And
you can hear a lot of my slapping of myself, petting this cat. It's all from the hilarity.
This one had a ton of comments. But the one that jumped out at me was Mike Drucker saying that this is the happiest he's been seeing a tweet in so long, and just thanking Martin, because it's a really funny tweet. Like, it's a great wordplay.
It is.
And really is like perfectly. That's so Martin is what I'm trying to say. That's just so Martin.
Instead of the future, he just sees really bad jokes.
Is that what That's So Raven was about? She saw the future?
She saw the future. It's the future she can see. That's So Raven. It's so mysterious to her.
I never watched it.
It was,
I was like
it was
just
really
too
good.
old.
I liked it a lot. New York Post, this is our 11th one. New York Post, Joker could make a fortune for pedophile rocker Gary Glitter.
Martin said, "My favorite genre of music."
Pedophile rocker.
And that was actually posted as we're recording it today. So
Oh,
that tweet's hot off the
damn.
presses. Number 12 is the New York Post saying, "Parents text their kids these questions more than 900 times a year."
Martin, where did comedian Martin Urbano take you? Got to be honest with your parents about these sorts of things.
I just love it. I just love that
It was the M&N studio for his amateur
he
class.
doubles down so... Oh, that would be really funny. He doubles down so hard on these, like, and couples them to headlines, which I think maximizes the chance of some, like, rando seeing it and just being like, what is this horrible man saying?
Well, I think that's what's so
Which I love. I love it. That's the Kaufman-esque
It's
part
doing
of it.
something interesting. So the 13th tweet, top 5 worst reasons to kill Hitler. 5 worst reasons to go back in time and kill Hitler. These are the worst ones. 5, you like to kill people.
4, to impress your ex.
3, peer pressure.
2, you hate his mustache.
1, last time you went back in time, you gave him some really bad ideas.
In my head, I see Letterman reading these out as like one of his famous top 10 lists. What were you going to say?
It's an expansion on that joke that he tells.
Yes.
Because on
Yeah.
stage, he tells it with just like, last time I went back in time, I gave him some really bad ideas.
Yeah. But I liked seeing it sort of expanded out and turned into its
Yeah.
independent thing.
Written version.
Yes.
Nice.
And then number 14, when Martin distances himself from Kelsey Kane. Martin, my lover, Kelsey Kane, is getting a lot of hate for doing a controversial character, and I'd like to take this time to make a statement publicly distancing myself from her. I'm just a normal pedophile trying to make it in this business by any means necessary.
Kelsey Kane replies, sorry, children, he's taken.
That's my other favorite part, is how she also like reinforces that part of his persona. And this tweet was tweeted out as part of the controversy around her Penis CK character, who is in no way based on any real person.
No, she's just pretending to be any old comedian walking around masturbating in front of people. Mm-hmm. Especially people who work for him. She's just portraying this totally weird thing that, like, I don't know.
I don't know where she got it from. It must be the muses.
Yeah, must be the muses. And then number 15, New York Post. Legendary Queens high school coach accused of a child sex abuse.
Martin, kind of fucked up to call him legendary for that.
I didn't see that one before.
Tim Benjamin responded, they aren't calling him legendary for raping kids. They're calling him legendary for winning several titles in coaching for over 40 years. And then Martin responded to Tim by saying, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Because that's one of my favorite things about Martin's Twitter is when someone doesn't get the joke, he never clarifies it for them. If it has gone over their head, he just lets it go over their head.
It's beautiful. It's art.
Yeah, it's totally
art.
Like Gethard said on the CGP episode that had Kelsey, Lorelai Ramirez, and Martin.
That Lorelai is an artist.
Lorelai
first.
is an artist first, and but I think it's true of all. I think it's also true of Martin. Like I think Martin.
I think Martin's a comedian.
I think he's a comedian first, but I think that there is like
he's a different kind of comedian.
You're right, but I'm just so impressed that it like reminds me of Kaufman, and so that's what I meant. I was going with the art thing, but I think you might be right.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. They're a particular type of artist, and now that we've gone through all of our tweets, it's time for the comedy theory amateur class put on by me, Professor Pineapple.
Professor Pineapple.
And adjunct professor, keeper of the canon.
Yes.
So I would like to elucidate you all. This is just what I thought would be fun.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the 3 and maybe 4 like main theories of comedy. Main theories that psychologists and philosophers have that are floating around in the ether when you Google, why is this funny?
Mm-hmm.
Which is not exactly what I Googled. I Googled theories of comedy if you want to find this. So yeah, we're going to talk about these theories, and we're going to be using one of Martin's tweets to illuminate all of them. And I don't know which one you're going to pick.
No, you don't.
Forrest, adjunct Professor Cannon. So if you would like to provide that for me, we can get started. I'm pulling most of this information from the paper Theories of Humor by David Hector Monroe, and he is a professor of philosophy at Monash University in Victoria, Australia. If you have stomach problems, you might want to go on the FODMAP diet, which is also published. It's about the things that are in food. It's also published by the Monash University.
Yeah, they have a very good app for that diet if you need to do that.
I was like, what? They're telling me about my comedy and my diet? Like, whoa. My media diet and my food diet. Feeding me in all the ways, Monash University. Do you have a tweet for me?
I do. And I think I'm going to go with, I don't have one. Let's go with the last one.
Okay.
Because I think that because you get such the audience response, I think that could be an interesting one to dig into.
Yeah. So, of course, we have the post, legendary Queens high school coach accused of child sex abuse. Martin, kind of fucked up to call him legendary for that.
And then Tim Benjamin saying they aren't calling him legendary for raping kids. They're calling him legendary for winning several titles and coaching for over 40 years. And Martin says, oh, that makes more sense. All
right. So the first theory that I want to talk about is the superiority theory. This is a super old theory of comedy. It's usually just presented in the lectures as like, this is like the first thing some white person wrote down. So we have to talk about it every time. And that white person was Thomas Hobbes.
Oh, I thought he was a stuffed tiger that comes to life.
He is, but he's also some white guy who I don't know what he talked about, economies. Okay, so the superiority theory is the idea that the pleasure we take in humor derives from feeling superiority over those that we laugh at. In this view, all humor is derisive. They even say things like, humans, and this is from a fucking like documentary that I had to watch for a class. Like, humans probably evolved humor, observing the thrashing of dying animals that they had to kill to consume, to differentiate themselves from their pain. And I'm like, I feel like that's not real. I feel like that's a lot of conjecture.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of guesswork.
But, so Thomas Hobbes, who was around from like 1588 to 1679, is probably the originator of this theory. Laughter, he says, is a kind of sudden glory. And he uses glory, not in the sense of glory hole, but vainglory or self-esteem. He adds that we laugh at the misfortunes or infirmities of others, at our own past follies, provided that we are conscious of now having surmounted them, and also at unexpected successes of our own. So the argument there is that with every comic thing, we're laughing at someone else that we're feeling superior to. So in this particular joke, kind of fucked up to call him legendary for that. I think that clearly who we're laughing at and who we're feeling superior to in a couple of things in this joke. The one is we're feeling superior to the child rapist.
Right. Yeah, no, that's definitely part of it.
And that's something that I think is present in his characterization. In his, he pretends to be a pedophile, but he also pretends to be like a self-important asshole.
Yeah. His sympathy is definitely with the people who have been victimized and not with the victimizers. And
I mean, that's why his website calls him a satirist.
Right.
He is making a pointed picture. He's saying like, look at how ridiculous it is that we kind of let pedophiles walk among us, pretty much.
And I think, at least with his tweets, there's also an element of, look at how often I can make this joke that ties in to a news story.
Yep.
Like it's pointed about the frequency of it, I think, too, which is great. That is a thing that needs to be highlighted and called out.
I think so too. We're also, of course, laughing at Tim Benjamin, however.
Oh yeah, with the response for sure.
Yeah. We're laughing at him. And that's something that he does when he's not telling people that he's not actually a pedophile.
Yeah.
I think like he's like, oh, LOL, we're laughing at these people.
And it's also an element of all the name dropping of famous ones that he does. Like the Cosby stuff is the same as superiority theory too.
Yeah. And I think something interesting that you didn't choose in this, you didn't choose any of the ones where he's doing wordplay.
Well,
which I thought was interesting because I'm like, oh, well, that, of course, wordplay doesn't make any sense with the superiority theory.
And the Dr. Burnout.
Yeah. No,
oh, you mean
I
didn't select for this part?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dr. Burnout, that's a wordplay joke.
Yeah.
Well, a follower of Hobbes would meet that criticism. They have pointed out that even when we laugh with comic vice, we are laughing at, and perhaps feeling superior to, the conventional morality which is being flouted. This would also apply to indecent jokes, and perhaps even to nonsense, since here even the conventional requirement is that we should talk sense.
I don't like Thomas Hobbes.
No, I really don't.
I'm not just saying that because of this. I actually actively dislike Thomas Hobbes. He's the guy who coined the phrase that life in its natural state is...
Oh, yeah.
What is it? Miserable, brutish, and short?
Yep.
And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You have a dim view of human nature, Mr. Hobbes.
Yeah. So while superiority is definitely part of comedy,
of
and there are definitely many, many jokes and characterizations that employ that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that I find about comedy is that every human is approaching it from a different subjective framework. And therefore, when we find theories like this, there's never going to be one answer.
No.
Which is why we're going to go on to our second theory.
Ooh, a twofer.
A twofer. The second theory, probably like the next one that I saw in most places as like, these are the basics. Like in fucking psych texts and shit. Relief theory. According to Freud, the censor, meaning our internal ego, or like, thing that's telling us how to think, will only allow us to indulge in forbidden thoughts only if it is first beguiled or disarmed in some way. The beguiling done, he thinks, by means of the techniques of humor, such as punning, representation of the opposite, and so on. He both thought that this allowed us to indulge in our malicious thoughts, but also like dispense with anxiety. So Freud is Freud.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of learning this one in film school.
Yeah, Freud's a messed up guy. Freud is basically like, and this is something that's big in Martin's comedy as well. Is there a tweet that you think of this list might do that?
Sums up the relief? Mm-hmm. Or is an example of relief?
Yeah.
I think that I think a number of them have elements of it. Mm-hmm. But one that jumps out to me is the successful entertainers are allowed to get away with sick, perverse, and generally horrible behavior without any repercussions. Mm-hmm. I mean, why do you think I'm trying to become an entertainer?
Yeah.
Because it's naming our anxiety. It's like naming the thing we're anxious about, but then flipping it, but the flip of it at the end, is the beguiling or something, like not necessarily beguiling, but it allows us to like think about the fact that is true in a way that is less horrifying because it has that tagged on at the end.
I think that's a really interesting choice. I would actually put that in our next theory, but
because I'm trying not to read ahead.
That's okay.
I'm trying to.
That's okay, but I do think that's really interesting. I think that what Freud is trying to get at, and of course is being very 19th century about explaining it, meaning a lot of words, is that it's more of his other tricks. For example, on Jimmy Kimmel Live, when he says,
yeah.
when I say the, you say poor. Kill the, and then everyone like kind of startled, like poor, like, oh no, like I just realized I was tricked into saying a ridiculous thing.
Right.
So Freud would argue that the reason this is funny is because
we all want to kill the poor.
we all want to kill the poor. We all want to kill the poor, but our internal censure, our sense of conscience is like, no, you shouldn't kill people. And so we're not allowed to think those things. So Martin has tricked us into thinking that.
Yeah, that was why I got angry at this. Not frustrated with this theory when I was reading it in school. Because I was like, why are you assuming that?
I think that there is validity in it only in that the relief, the release of the pent-up tension and the nervous tension. I don't think that it's about allowing ourselves to think mean thoughts.
Right.
I think that it's more about revealing our anxieties.
Yeah.
And releasing those anxieties. So when comedians tell jokes that... I keep thinking of Louis C.K. jokes, and I really don't want to talk about him.
But I mean, I think that, and maybe this isn't, tell me if this is what you mean. But I know that there are comedians who are like assault survivors and then tell jokes about it to sort of like bring a light, like to sort of take power of the situation by making light even of dark things that they know exist.
Yeah, and that's something that Lorelai Ramirez talked about a lot in their episode
CGP
on
pod.
CGP. I think that
I guess that wouldn't quite be it.
I think that it is to a degree, because I think that what it is, it's more like I've been tricked by the joke format into allowing myself to like think about a terrible thing that is definitely happening in the world, and that it feels bad to suppress in my mind, but it also feels bad to think about. Yeah. And so because the cushion of laughter is about it, that anxiety can then be released.
Yeah, like I think it's slightly adjacent to this, maybe like a little bit, but I think it's at least close.
Mm-hmm. Martin doesn't do too many like that.
No, he's much more of a wordplay guy, what Freud would call innocuous jokes and tenditious jokes. Tenditious meaning controversial, jokes with a victim. In a lot of cases, the victim being, there's two layers of victims to a lot of Martin's jokes. There's the appearance of a victim, like the victim that his character is putting down, but then the main victim is his character, the creepy pedophile. Yeah. That's who we're laughing at. Yeah. Yeah, he is the butt of the joke.
Yes.
Every time.
And now here's the last theory, or I suppose the second to last theory, because we have an overarching theory. And all of these theories really work together. But this is the incongruity theory. Incongruity is often identified with frustrated expectation as a concept we owe to Immanuel Kant.
Of course it's Kant who's like, a thing didn't go the way I expected. That's the basis of comedy. I do the same thing every day, down to the minute.
He says that humor arises from, quote, the sudden transformation of a strained expectation into nothing, end quote. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? So I looked it up.
Oh, thank you, because I did not understand that either.
I'm like, what is he talking about? So I read more and figured it out. It's when you're led to expect something to happen verbally or in a story or in a list, but something else happens. So this is like when he says, I'm going back in time to kill Hitler. Yeah. Because the last time I did, I gave him some bad ideas. Like, that's a subversion of the expectation. Yeah. We expect something along the lines of like, oh yeah, we've heard the kill Hitler as a baby thing
Martin
before.
does a lot of this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the one that you picked before, that you thought it's the performers do awful things. We expect it to be a further condemnation, but instead it's, oh, and I want to do those awful things. Ha! That's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, and then the tweet where he like joke distances himself from Kelsey is also
Yeah,
that.
it is. Another interesting thing about the incongruity theory, and where I think that like its strength really lies in comedy. I think that comedians who take advantage of this in their jokes are doing something really cool.
Yeah.
Humor is more penetrating when it brings to light a real connection between two things normally regarded with quite different attitudes, or when it forces on us a complete reversal of values. So that's in addition to things like, I didn't put that many examples in this write-up part, because I'm like, no, we'll take it from the tweets.
Which we did.
We'll take it from the tweets, which we did. And I think that,
I think there's definitely a reversal of values in the one where he distances himself from Kelsey. Mm-hmm. Because there's the like holding himself, he holds up himself, his character's pedophileness as like, I'm just as like moral exemplar. Versus a controversial comedian.
Yeah.
When really, obviously, the point is the exact flip of it.
We're supposed to be putting our brain together and thinking like, oh, she's getting hate, so people would expect someone to distance himself from her. She really did get real hate for this. And people really did like not want to work with her because of this. And he was instead being like, isn't this a lot like, that fucking creepy ass person that you're all defending?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you should be doing with that person?
And I don't even know if it's that specific. It may be, but it's just like, oh, you're spending all of this energy going after a comedian who told a controversial joke when there's real bad people you should be going after. Generally, like my character.
Another one of it is was upset when someone called my comedy a bunch of dad jokes.
Yeah.
But then it was Dylan Farrow. So then you're being made aware of an even darker like sort of thing. And you're combining it with dad jokes. So it really is, he's using it to make us laugh and to sort of Trojan horse a much darker concept into our minds, forcing us to look at something dark, but we were tricked into it. And it was funny, so we were able to think about it longer. I personally get very shut down thinking about sad things.
Yeah.
And so I like it when someone like Jon Stewart or Martin Urbano makes a joke about it, because then I feel actually empowered to do something about it. I feel like I can grok it in my head and keep it in my mind for longer.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. That's why I was like a daily watcher of Colbert and everything. And part of why I love Martin so much is because, like that's why political comedy is such a popular thing when it's done well. Because it lets you do that.
Yeah. Humor, according to incongruity theories, may be said to consist in the finding of the inappropriate within the appropriate. It is not merely that unexpected connections are found between apparently dissimilar things. Our notions of propriety or the status quo are involved. The humorist drags to light the inconvenient facts which shatter these attitudes and puncture these stereotypes. We're getting into the polemics part of my lecture.
That one also reminds me of Seinfeld, just as a slight aside, is because throughout Seinfeld, people were like, oh, I relate so much to George, Elaine, Kramer, and Jerry. And then the series finale is all of them on trial for being terrible people. Because they saw someone getting mugged and they just taped it and didn't help the person getting mugged, so they get arrested for a Good Samaritan law. And it highlights that all of these things that you thought were like lovable, quirky things were actually them being completely selfish narcissists.
Yep.
And no one thought of it because they were acting as society, they always had a very clear code of societal conduct. And that tension was always one of the core parts of that. So that's interesting. But
something else interesting about that particular point is they've actually done studies on like science fucking studies in goddamn labs paid for by universities. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Where they show people different types of jokes and they get the best laughs out of fucking Martin Urbano jokes.
That makes sense.
It's when It's a pun that tricks you into something even
Yeah.
more. It's when you put an innocuous joke, which is wordplay, lists, puns, etc., things that have nothing controversial about them. So his like fire Dr. Burnout,
Yeah.
kind of. That's a little bit, but then there's also the punch of something way darker. So when you combine those two things, you get the most laughs.
That makes sense. I mean, you think through like the list of like great modern comedians, and so many of them do that. Mm-hmm. Like they have a joke where, yeah, no, it's constructed very well, but there's also a point to it or a darker element or something. Because like Carlin did that all the time.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's the I'm leaving my girlfriend. It turns out she's a pedophile. How do you know? She said she wants kids.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's extra funny because now I'm making light of something that's dark. Something that is interesting about it, or something else that I found interesting about him being the frickin' king of the most humorous type of humor that Freud first identified, and then goddamn social scientists identified with data.
Yeah.
So go Martin. Is the idea of benign violation. Mm-hmm. So this is a really popular sort of new theory of comedy. The idea is that all things that we find humorous are a violation in some way of some norms, even if it's just gibberish. But when that violation we know isn't going to hurt us, so it's benign, that's when we laugh. And that was how it developed evolutionarily. It's good. It's like, oh no, is this going to hurt me? No, it's not. Release of tension, laugh.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I think that he and Lorelai Ramirez and Kelsey Kane, and honestly the people who are being tapped for the National Lampoon Hour, are using this tenditious humor wrapped in innocuous humor. We're laughing at the envelope of the joke that is around this kernel of dark messed upness. I think they're using it to make people think.
I think they're
using
right.
it to puncture stereotypes, because they're doing these kinds of jokes without putting down the victim, victimizing the powerful, making people uncomfortable, and then think about what their role is. Lorelai Ramirez said in their episode on CGP that they want to share and torture art together.
Yeah, I love that quote. I love that quote.
That's what it's about. And I think that Martin is super on board with that. And I think it's even cooler that like Martin has chosen this character. Mm-hmm. He works very closely with many survivors of sexual assault and childhood sexual assault. Terrible, awful things. That they all touch on very heavily in their sets and learn how to do in different ways. And I think that they're going to continue to use it to draw attention. When I see Martin Urbano do his thing, I'm like, wow, pedophiles are awful. Yeah. All of these powerful people who, like when he had the moment of silence for Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, and he's been doubling down on the Epstein stuff so hard since that happened. So I think you're right. He's definitely doing it as a way to like get at and criticize the powerful.
Yeah, and being like, in society, like these are powerful goddamn people. Yeah. So it doesn't seem unlikely that they would be treated that way. They have been treated that way in the news. We know that they have. And so it's like this guilt that we are all complicit in these evils. I don't know. That's what I feel. And so I laugh at it.
No. I mean, I think that there's definitely an element of that in especially Martin. And because, I think there's definitely truth to that. I think that it's part of why his character is so funny is because we know that while Martin isn't that character, there are that character's out there and in the arts. Yeah. We know
Same with the penis CK.
Oh yeah. No, they're very learning about. Yeah, they're similar. There's a similar undercurrent there.
Yeah.
In different forms.
The reason why I'm really excited for them specifically to be on National Lampoon is because I learned today, because I'm learning about the history of comedy like a dork, that the original National Lampoon Radio Hour was mostly just like rude humor.
That makes sense.
Like John Belushi and, the people there, they were just trying to put out like stupid, funny bullshit. Like they weren't trying to be intellectuals about it, like the Second City or whatever. They were doing like stupid humor, and I love that kind of shit.
Yeah.
If you've seen any of the National Lampoon
it's
videos.
especially funny for them to do that, given the National Lampoon
and
as a spin-off of the Harvard Lampoon.
Yeah, like lampooning someone is a verb.
Yeah.
For like making fun of them, just fucking them up. So I think it's so cool that for this new one, instead of it just being sort of like this comedic explosion of tension that just needed to get out, there's these artists sort of working together, John Belushi and all the other ones.
Aykroyd
and that stuff. This is a group of comedians that have honed their ability to weaponize comedy, to weaponize rude, insulting comedy. Right?
Yes. Aykroyd was not on the show.
Aykroyd was not on the show.
No, Chevy Chase was.
Chevy Chase.
But no, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's part of why I'm excited to have Martin on there, and then Brett Davis also.
I think it's going to be super satirical
I
in a
agree.
way that the original one wasn't necessarily. I haven't actually heard any of the original ones.
I wonder where you can. It's
online, probably.
No, I know, but you might be able to buy them or they might be out as a podcast to promote the new one or something. I don't know. But I think that could be really interesting, and I'm very excited for it because I think you're right. Like, there's a satirical edge to everyone who's on that list that we've seen, at least. Like Rachel Pegram definitely has a satirical edge. Brett Davis has a real satirical. I mean, his special characters were all very satirical. I mean, he went after Chris Hardwick like right after that hat came out.
I mean, that's almost why I related less to the special without Brett Davis than the Chris Gethard show, because it wanted me to think a lot of stuff. Like, more than the Chris Gethard show, it was being pointed at issues. It was like sort of taking in the Daily Show, Yeah. Not as much of the Daily Show, but I'm just like, oh, fuck.
Well, because...
like, that's bad. Not the show, but they're talking about things that then I have to sit and think about. Like, the satire drills into your brain, but then it also gives you a way to wade through it. At least me personally.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that characterization is totally accurate, and I think it's easy to feel the discomfort that satire often can initially bring and be like, I'm not going to do this.
Or at least it's like black licorice. Like some days you really want it, and some days you're like, my mouth is still a little numb. Like, I need to let it sit. But in any time it's good. And I think we're kind of ripe for it because we're a humor saturated populace. Yeah. We're used to laughing at our news. And I think that the role of comedians, while it's always been really important, like, the availability of podcasts, the availability of CGP, the availability that these writers have to get of people who aren't just white dudes and white girls in flannel.
Yeah.
Not to characterize like Gilda Radner as that, but
That's why I thought it was interesting when the special had Rose McGowan on in 2015.
Wow.
To critique, like one of the things she talked about was a casting call that Adam Sandler put out that she thought was sexist.
It probably was.
It was, but it was. But it's interesting. I don't know. It's just interesting that this scene that Martin is also part of, because Martin was on the special multiple times and all that, has been on the forefront of like this
using character comedy in that really interesting way.
Yeah. And like in the Gethard verse you can. I mean, for the assault stuff, it came a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But Connor.
It was a lot more.
Had a gentler form of it.
Yeah, but
in 2012,
I feel like
but there was a similar spirit there.
There was, and there's always been the spirit of like having a character, but in a lot of cases, it was more about the absurdism.
That's true. That's a
that
difference.
was making us laugh. So that's the incongruity theory.
Yeah.
It's that they're setting up our brain to expect a certain response. You expect certain things out of an Olympian. You expect certain things out of a presidential candidate, and then they just do something different.
Yeah.
And hilarious. And I really like random humor and non sequitur humor. I love it. I think it's great. I think we should all be shouting into the void in the absurdity of like human life.
Yeah. I think the incongruity theory is often the one that I personally gravitate towards the most.
And there's of course like, there's all sorts there's tons and tons and tons of theories about humor. Tons, way more than this. I got really lost in the weeds philosophically doing research for this. So if anyone wants to talk about the philosophy of comedy. But yeah, mostly just to say that I think that Martin and the group of people in the National Lampoon, the group of people that we're seeing on CGP are doing something really radical.
I agree.
With comedy.
I agree.
And I think that it's badass and it's inspiring and it's super punk rock.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I'm voting Urbano Ramirez for 2020, the election.
I think I will too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone should tune in.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have one more topic.
We have one more topic?
A regular topic.
Oh, yeah. What do we expect?
What do we expect this week?
I expect him.
Well, do you want me to go first?
Oh, yeah. Go first. You go first.
That's tradition. Tradition. I expect to learn a lot, to laugh a lot, and love a lot. I don't know. I think we'll get more lessons. I'm curious to see what panel he'll put together this time. I'm wondering if the panel of white guys will return.
Yeah.
To weigh in on diversity issues in comedy, or what? I'm hoping that some of his students from the first time come back, because I'd love to see them react and learn more and see how they play into it. Because some of them were really funny last time.
They were. It was really fun seeing him do like 5 different satires.
Yeah.
All in character, as a character that we can laugh at, presenting people we can feel better than, but also not putting anyone down that doesn't deserve to be put down.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I expect diagrams and to learn.
Yes.
What do you expect?
I expect penises.
Oh yeah.
Specifically, probably penis CK. It's the disembodied penis.
That wasn't an incongruous answer for you to give.
No, it's the disembodied penis that Kelsey Kane made a video about.
Oh, yeah,
Penis CK.
Penis CK.
Yeah. We're going to just see Penis CK alone on a... No, that's going to be for Kelsey Kane's CGP.
Oh, I would love
Isn't she doing one?
I don't know.
Has it not been announced that she's doing one?
Are you thinking Claire O'Kane?
I'm thinking Claire O'Kane.
Yeah, no.
Well, Kelsey Kane should also get one.
She should also get one. But Claire O'Kane is a San Francisco comic who's coming up later in this run of CGP.
So excited! So everyone tune in on Wednesday, learn more about comedy. Thank you for listening to us, for learning about benign violation, for learning about the incongruity theory. It's actually called like the incongruity resolution theory because they're like,
oh yeah, because it resolves it.
Yeah, it's not just funny if it's non-sequitorial. And I'm like, it kind of is. The relief theory and the superiority theory. I have many more theories about comedy that we might talk about later. But yeah, get excited for Martin Urbano, Latino comedian and registered sex offender, Martin Urbano.
We're going to turn you from a comedy 0 into a comedy 1.